Thank you for watching Amir 5858. I am Amir. I am thankful to all news resources and my team. Following are the news which have been reported by American, European, Canadian, Asian, African and Australian channels, and of course also the news agencies AFP, AP and Reuters. Now the news headlines. Abortion and regulations rules are in US Supreme Court. Aid package for Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan and some Palestinians has been signed by Mr. Biden. Evangelical Christians of Ukraine due to Russian invasion. Their problems. US giving long-range missiles to Ukraine. China condemns US for supporting Taiwan. Mr. Blinken in China. Israel bombed northern Gaza. Israel also bombed Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. American hostage video by Hamas. Pro-Palestinian protests in US. New regulations for airlines in United States. Bird flu in America. On Wall Street, Dow Jones Industrials went down, Nasdaq and S&P 500 went up. Now the news in detail.
To Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The U.S. Senate has approved a $95 billion foreign and military aid package to help Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The bill also included a provision that could lead to a ban on TikTok. This is Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Mr. President, today, the Senate sends a unified message to the entire world. America will always defend democracy in its hour of need. We tell our allies, we will stand with you. We tell our adversaries, don't mess with us. We tell the world, we will do everything to defend democracy and our way of life.
The final vote in the Senate was 79-18. Senators voting no included 15 Republicans, as well as Democratic Senators Jeff Merkley and Peter Welch, and Independent Senator Bernie Sanders.
We are now in the absurd situation where Israel is using U.S. military assistance to block the delivery of U.S. humanitarian aid to Palestinians. If that is not crazy, I don't know what is, but it's also a clear violation of U.S. law. Given that reality, we should not today even be having this debate. It is illegal to continue current military aid to Israel, let alone send another $9 billion with no strings attached.
The Senate approved sending more money to Israel in the same day. United Nations called for an independent probe into the discovery of over 300 bodies in a mass grave at the Nasser Medical Complex following Israel's siege on the hospital. Ravina Shamdasani is a spokesperson for the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights.
We are horrified also by the destruction of Al-Nasser Medical Complex and Al-Shifa Medical Complex and the reports of the discovery of mass graves in and around facilities. And we call for independent, effective, transparent investigations into the deaths. Given the prevailing climate of impunity, this should include international investigators. Hospitals are entitled to very special protection under international humanitarian law. And let's be clear, the intentional killing of civilians, detainees, and others who are hors de combat is a war crime.
On Tuesday, U.S. State Department spokesperson Vedant Patel refused to support the UN call for a probe into the mass graves in Gaza. Patel was questioned by journalist Saeed Arakat.
More than 300 bodies have been found. The United Nations is asking or calling for an independent investigation. Would you support such an independent investigation?
Right now, Saeed, we are asking for more information.
Right.
That is squarely where we're leaving the conversation. Right. I don't have any details to match, confirm, or offer as it relates to that. We're aware of those reports, and we have asked the government of Israel for additional clarity and information, and that's where I'm at.
In Brooklyn, New York, police arrested as many as 300 Jewish activists who took part in a massive outdoor Passover Seder near the home of Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. Protesters were calling for the U.S. to stop funding Israel's assault on Gaza. This is Simone Zimmerman of Jewish Voice for Peace.
What does it mean to celebrate a holiday about liberation in a moment in which Palestinian lives and freedom are under their most grave assault since the Nakba of 1948?
Simone Zimmerman was addressing a Seder in the streets. This comes as campus protests continue to spread. At the University of Minnesota, police arrested 9 students who refused to take down a pro-Palestinian encampment. In California, the campus of Cal Poly Humboldt was shut down after students occupied a building. In Massachusetts, officials at Harvard University have closed Harvard Yard ahead of possible protests. Harvard has also suspended the student group Palestine Solidarity Committee. Meanwhile, here in New York, NYU has put up a plywood wall around Gould Plaza where police arrested students on Monday. And students at Columbia University have reportedly been given a deadline to shut down their Gaza Solidarity encampment by this morning. Suspended Barnard College student Sof Askenazi spoke on Tuesday.
I cannot and could not stand to be complicit in our university's ongoing support for Israel's genocidal campaign. There are no universities left in Gaza, so we chose to reclaim our university for the people of Palestine.
At Donald Trump's criminal trial in Lower Manhattan, the former publisher of the National Enquirer, David Pecker, had told jurors that he helped Trump's 2016 campaign by killing stories about Trump's extramarital affairs while running fake stories about Trump's opponents. Pecker testified he began helping Trump after a meeting at Trump Tower in 2015 where the future president asked him to, quote, help the campaign, unquote. Pecker went on to describe the paper's so-called catch and kill policy that involved buying, then burying negative articles about Trump. Pecker said, quote, I said I would be your eyes and ears, unquote. Pecker also admitted the National Enquirer made up a story attacking Trump's rival Ted Cruz by falsely linking his Cuban-born father to Lee Harvey Oswald and the Kennedy assassination. Meanwhile, the judge presiding over Trump's trial, Juan Merchan, is expected to rule soon on whether to hold Trump in contempt of court for attacking witnesses and jurors. On Tuesday, the judge lashed out at Trump's lawyer, saying, quote, you're losing all credibility with the court. In other legal news, the U.S. Supreme Court hears arguments today on Idaho's near-total abortion ban. The Biden administration sued Idaho, saying the ban violates EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act, which the Justice Department says protects the rights of pregnant people to get the emergency medical care they need. In Pennsylvania, Democratic Congressmember Summer Lee has defeated Bhavini Patel. Lee was one of the first members of Congress to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. On Tuesday night, Lee wrote on social media, quote, opposing genocide is good politics and good policy. Hashtag ceasefire now. Her opponent had been backed by billionaire Republican megadonor Jeffrey Yass, who's an ally of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Summer Lee spoke to supporters last night in Pittsburgh.
Our movement is stronger than every GOP billionaire that exists. Our movement is stronger than any wedge issue, is stronger than any opportunist, is stronger than everybody who wants to say that the power of the people is not stronger than the people in power.
She won in Pennsylvania's primary. Secretary of State Tony Blinken is arriving in China today for 3 days of talks in Beijing. On Tuesday, China accused the United States of, quote, stoking military confrontation, unquote, by deploying new powerful missile launchers in the Philippines as part of an ongoing military exercise involving nearly 17,000 U.S. and Filipino troops. In Argentina, hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets Tuesday to protest President Javier Milei's plan to cut spending on higher public education. As many as 500,000 rallied in Buenos Aires alone in what may have been the largest day of action since Milei's election. Voting is continuing in India's massive nationwide elections. Opponents of Prime Minister Narendra Modi have accused him of using hate speech after he described Muslims in India as, quote, infiltrators. The opposition Congress Party has filed a formal complaint against Modi with election authorities. In labor news, the Federal Trade Commission has voted to ban most employers from using non-compete clauses to bar workers from taking jobs at rival companies. The FTC estimates the rule change could boost the earnings of workers by at least $400 billion over the next decade. Republican lawmakers in Tennessee have passed a bill to allow teachers to carry concealed guns on the grounds of public schools. Protesters inside the Tennessee House began chanting blood on your hands after the Republican leadership cut off debate ahead of the vote. The U.S. Justice Department has agreed to pay nearly $139 million to more than 100 gymnasts who accuse the FBI of grossly mishandling sexual abuse claims against Larry Nassar, the former doctor for Team USA Gymnastics. The FBI's neglect led to Nassar abusing or assaulting over 100 young gymnasts between the time the FBI first heard of the accusations in 2015 until Nassar's arrest the following year. He's currently serving a 60-year sentence. And Mumia Abu-Jamal turns 70 today. The imprisoned journalist and former Black Panther has been jailed for over 42 years. Supporters of Mumia Abu-Jamal are planning to rally near Philadelphia City Hall today, where they plan to deliver petitions collected in France calling for his release. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York with Democracy Now! Co-host Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country.
Your Holiness, what an honor. Tonight, our exclusive, in-depth conversation with Pope Francis at the Vatican. His message for the world as he pleads for peace ahead of the Church's first World Children's Day. Can you help negotiate peace? The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, and welcome to this special edition of the CBS Evening News from Rome. Thank you for being with us. I'm Nora O'Donnell, overlooking the Vatican, where just a few hours ago, we interviewed the Holy Father, Pope Francis. The head of the Catholic Church shares his insight on the state of the world in his first extensive one-on-one interview with a U.S. television network. His Holiness spoke to us about war, peace, famine, and climate change, all with the world's children in mind. Our sit-down comes ahead of the Vatican's first World Children's Day, with a message that all kids are, quote, precious in God's eyes. We've been in Rome and Vatican City for a few days now, speaking with people from around the world who've made the sacred pilgrimage to reconnect with their faith, pray at the Sistine Chapel, and have a chance to see Pope Francis. A reminder that people of all faiths turn to Pope Francis for guidance on the world's most difficult issues, making our conversation with His Holiness that much more important. Oh my goodness, Benjamin, Your Holiness, what an honor. So wonderful to meet you. Love to meet you. Yes, thank you so much for doing this. We met Pope Francis today at Casa Santa Marta, the guest house where the pontiff lives instead of the lavish papal palace. At 87 years old, he may have trouble walking, but he had no difficulty sitting down with us for an hour-long conversation. How's your health?
Ella está bien.
My health is good.
In nearly every address,
Que soffre tanto per la guerra.
the Pope often calls for peace. He condemned Hamas's October 7th attack, but has also called on Israel to use restraint. There are now pictures of starving children coming out of Gaza. What about those that call that a genocide?
Genocidio.
Genocide.
Yo llamo todas las tardes a las 7 a la...
Every afternoon at 7 p.m., I call Gaza to the parish. There were about 600 people there, and they tell me what's going on.
Lo que sucede ahí es muy duro.
It's very hard. Very, very hard. Food goes in,
Va la gente a buscar y...
but they have to fight for it. It's very hard.
I know you call for peace. You have called for a ceasefire in many of your sermons. Can you help negotiate peace?
I can pray. I do. I pray a lot.
During World Children's Day, which is the end of May, the UN says over 1 million people will be facing famine in Gaza, many of them children. What can be done?
No solo Gaza. Pensemos en Ucrania.
Not only Gaza, we should think about Ukraine.
Que esos niños no saben sonreír.
Those kids don't know how to smile. I tell them something, but they forgot how to smile. And this is very hard when the child forgets to smile. That's really very serious. Very serious.
Sí, es muy grave.
Do you have a message for Vladimir Putin when it comes to Ukraine?
Por favor,
Please,
en los países en guerra,
countries at war, all of them,
detengan la guerra. Busquen.
stop the war. Look to negotiate. Look for peace. A negotiated peace is better than a war without end.
Negociada que no una guerra sin fin.
His Most Holy Father is considered one of the most influential people in the world, leading nearly 1.4 billion Catholics. He is the first Pope from the Americas, the first Jesuit, and will host the Vatican's first World Children's Day next month. I love that you take the kids in the Pope-mobile with you and bring them up to the Apostolic Palace when you say a prayer. Why do you do that?
Los niños traen siempre un mensaje.
Children always bear a message. They bear a message, and it is a way for us to have a younger heart.
De rejuvenecer el corazón.
Francis is also the first pontiff to make climate change a priority. In 2015, to make an important point, images of the environment were projected onto St. Peter's Basilica, the dome designed in the mid-16th century by Michelangelo. What do you say to the deniers of climate change?
Y hay gente que es necia.
There are people who are foolish, and foolish even if you show them research, they don't believe it.
¿Por qué? Generalmente
Why? Because they don't understand the situation or because of their interest. But climate change exists.
el cambio climático existe.
His progressive style has made him popular worldwide, with millions coming here to St. Peter's Square to catch a glimpse of the Holy Father.
It has made us emotional, just being here, going into St. Peter's Basilica, going into the Sistine Chapel. It just tears coming into our eyes because you can feel the Spirit.
Sophia and Aaron came with their family from San Diego, California. How did it make you feel when he came out of the window?
It made me feel good, like butterflies in my stomach.
Still, the number of Catholics in America is dwindling. In the U.S., only 20% of adults identify as Catholic, and that's down from 24% in 2007. I wonder if you could speak to those who don't go to Mass anymore, or maybe don't see a place for themselves in the Catholic Church.
Yo les diría que siempre,
I would say there is always a place. Always.
que si en esta parroquia
If in this parish the priest doesn't seem welcoming, I understand, but go and look.
lo comprendo, que busquen, pero siempre hay
There is always a place.
que no se escape.
Do not run away from the church. The church is very big. It's more than a temple. It's more. You shouldn't run away from her.
We also asked the Pope about the migrant crisis, gay rights, women's role in the church, and whether he's thinking about retirement. We'll have that and much more on 60 Minutes on Sunday, May 19th, and then a primetime special on Monday, May 20th, right here on CBS. For our interview with Pope Francis, we also wanted to take a pulse of the Catholic Church back home in the U.S. So we asked Catholics in cities across the country about their relationship with the Church, how they feel about this Pope, and what message they want to hear from him.
I would describe the Pope as transformative. He's one of a kind papacy.
I think he has done a great job talking about the marginalized, the poor, the care for the environment.
We support him. He is our guide.
Like the church he leads, Americans' opinions of Pope Francis are diverse.
He's got some things that I agree with, some things maybe I don't agree with.
We always need popes that challenge our way of thinking.
and I think he's doing that.
While a majority of American Catholics view Francis favorably, many we spoke with thought the church needed to evolve. 83% of U.S. Catholics want the church to allow the use of contraception, and more than half think the church should recognize gay marriage.
I think they do need to bring women into the church.
They need to ordain women as priests, and they need to allow priests to marry.
Everything changes, and sometimes I think the church needs to change too.
A recent survey found more Americans were leaving the Catholic Church at higher rates than any other religion.
I feel like I could just be spiritual anywhere. I don't really necessarily have to go to a church to, and I feel like that's the old school way of thinking.
I think there's been a lot of bad news about the Catholics, the religion, about the priests in general, and I think people have turned around and walked away from that.
We have a lot of young people that grew up in the Catholic Church, but they don't feel that they're getting the message.
They feel they're not accepted. They feel they might be ostracized. They feel that they don't belong to the church.
We spoke with Patrick Egan, who left the Catholic Church as a teenager, only to come back in search of a community. He's now a leader at a local parish.
Does the Catholic Church feel different under Pope Francis?
Yes, Francis is really trying to open the door to participation by people who have been traditionally outside of the hierarchy.
He blames strict adherence to ideology for the decline, but says that can change.
What do you think it would take for the Catholic Church to be able to reconnect with Americans?
They need to meet Americans where they are. We are a very secular society. And so if the church can figure out a way to help people understand how a spiritual journey and a faith community can really make one's life more rich and meaningful, that I think is also part of the story.
And Nikki Batiste joins us now. And Nikki, so many of the people we spoke with here thought that Pope Francis has been much more inclusive. What did you learn?
The feeling is very much the same here in the U.S. Pope Francis has made a concerted effort to soften the message of the Catholic Church. It's an approach that has angered some of the more conservative followers, but it's part of the Pope's plan to make all feel welcome. Nora?
We also asked him about those conservative bishops. You'll hear about that later. Nikki Batiste, thank you. Now to tonight's other top story. Clashes between police and pro-Palestinian demonstrators are intensifying. Protests at Columbia University in New York are now in their 8th day. And today the Speaker of the House was on campus calling on the school's president to restore order. CBS's Nancy Chen has more on the growing nationwide tensions.
Let him go! This was the scene at the University of Southern California after school security tried to stop students from setting up a protest encampment. Hundreds of demonstrators surrounded a patrol car after campus police detained one student who was later released. At the University of Texas Austin, police in riot gear and officers on horseback confronted about 200 students participating in a pro-Palestinian rally. More than 20 were arrested. On the East Coast, demonstrators set up an encampment on Harvard Yard in solidarity with student protesters at Columbia University, where House Speaker Mike Johnson spoke late today and was met with both cheers and boos.
I'm here today joining my colleagues in calling on President Shafiq to resign if she cannot immediately bring order to this chaos.
I'm just standing on the sidewalk! This is day 8 of the protests at Columbia University. The school said it is making important progress with protesters, but is giving students a deadline to dismantle their tents. The protesters say they will not leave until the school agrees to cut its business ties to Israel.
We need the administrators of these universities to get control of the situation. And if they can't, then we need the National Guard, law enforcement, or someone to come in here and take control.
Are you calling for the National Guard to come here?
Desperate times call for desperate measures.
For now, New York Governor Kathy Hochul says she has no plans to send in the Guard. Columbia announced today that because of the unrest, there will be a remote option for upcoming final exams. Graduation is set to take place on campus in 3 weeks, Nora.
Nancy Chen, thank you so much. We turn now to the Supreme Court in a case that could have wide-ranging implications for women's health care nationwide. At issue is the conflict between Idaho's near-total abortion ban and a federal law that requires hospitals to provide emergency medical treatment. CBS's Jan Crawford was there for the oral arguments.
The justices were sharply divided over Biden administration arguments that federal law, which requires hospitals to provide necessary stabilizing treatment, including abortions, overrides Idaho's near-total ban, which permits abortion to save a mother's life, but not when her health is at risk.
Idaho law says the doctor has to determine not that there's merely a serious medical condition, but that the person will die.
Liberal justices provided real-life examples of women who have been denied abortions in states with restrictive laws.
Her life is not imperiled, but she's going to lose her reproductive organs. She's going to lose the ability to have children in the future, unless an abortion takes place.
But some conservative justices noted that in Idaho, doctors can perform some abortions if they believe the woman is in danger of dying. Raul Labrador is Idaho's Attorney General.
They continue to say that this is putting women's lives in jeopardy, and it is not.
Idaho officials say the Biden administration is trying to find a backdoor way to broaden abortion access.
There will be more abortions happening in hospitals because they will create an exception that will allow any type of abortion to happen in the state of Idaho.
But Stacy Sibe, a high-risk pregnancy doctor in Idaho, says physicians are now afraid to perform abortions even if the state law may allow it, over fears they could be prosecuted.
We need to be able to help take care of people at this point.
And, you could face criminal prosecution.
Yes, and jail time.
And in the political world today, another state with a near-total ban, Arizona, is now poised to repeal it after 3 Republicans join with Democrats in the Arizona House. That will go to the Arizona Senate, where there's support for the repeal, and then to the governor, who's expected to sign it. That would mean that in Arizona, abortions again would be permitted up to 15 weeks. Nora?
That's a big development. Jan Crawford, thank you. President Biden signed a bipartisan national security package into law today. The measure forces TikTok's China-based parent company to sell the video sharing app or be banned in the U.S. That provision is expected to face legal challenges and disrupt the income of content creators. There are 170 million TikTok users in the U.S. alone. The law also provides $95 billion in long-delayed aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. There are new federal rules for airlines on everything from cash refunds to stopping hidden fees. What consumers need to know next. We have a consumer alert tonight about new rules aimed at protecting millions of Americans who fly. One rule will require airlines to automatically provide refunds for things like canceled and delayed flights, delayed baggage, returns, and failed in-flight Wi-Fi. The Department of Transportation will also require airlines to be more transparent about extra fees, clearly explaining all additional charges. Tonight, we're also taking you inside the iconic St. Peter's Basilica for a rare private tour. That's next.
If you can't watch the CBS Evening News, you can listen. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Back here in Rome, overlooking the Vatican and St. Peter's Square and the magnificent Basilica, the largest church in the world and the smallest nation in the world. And tonight, we're taking you on a private tour. The beauty by day doesn't hold a candle to its nighttime majesty. How is it that we're the only ones here?
Just for you, for the CBS. This is a very important moment for, I think, English American television.
Yes, ahead of a very important time for World Children's Day.
Yes, for me, it's un grande momento, the great moment.
Yes, it's absolutely. Father Enzo Fortunato tells us 100,000 children will come here. He's organizing the Vatican's first World Children's Day. We visited one of the Vatican's most popular treasures, Michelangelo's Pietà, which shows the Mother Mary holding Jesus. Oh my gosh. Father Fortunato took us where no one gets to go, up close to the masterpiece. This is 500 years old. It's gonna make me cry.
Io dico sempre che
He always says it's the women who save the world. Oh, thank you for saying that. Why is St. Peter's Basilica so special?
because it's a house of the Pope, but above all is the inside the tomb of St. Peter.
One of the holiest treasures inside one of Christianity's holiest sites. And we'll have some final thoughts from our exclusive interview with Pope Francis. That's next.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by Sensodyne, #1 dentist recommended brand for sensitive teeth.
Finally tonight, a word about our first of its kind interview with the Holy Father. Historic, and this is something I've dreamt about my whole career at CBS News. It took an entire team of dedicated journalists to make this happen. Today, the Pope told us that he hopes his legacy is to welcome everyone. And as one longtime follower told us, Pope Francis may not change the lyrics of the Catholic Church, but he is trying to change the tune. You can see much more of our interview in May on 60 Minutes and in a primetime special. And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. I'm Nora O'Donnell in Rome. Good night.
Will northern schools be forgotten when students flock to the land of cotton? They can study without friction south of the Mason-Dixon. Students are rejecting elite colleges in favor of southern schools, where teeth and shoes are optional. No, not true. No. It's part of a nationwide enrollment trend impacted by anti-Israel campus protests at top-tier universities. That's right, schools that years ago discriminated against Jews now discriminate against Asians and Jews. Places like Columbia and Yale have seen violent demonstrations and even arrests as mobs of students take to the streets professing anti-Semitism. For Jewish students, the fervor unfolding in formerly prestigious institutions is enough reason to look elsewhere, not just for education, but for their own safety. Take Scott Katz, the student at North Carolina's Elon University. As he explained in a recent interview, the madness hasn't reached schools down south, saying, quote, "Even if I could have gotten into Harvard, I wouldn't have gone. I definitely feel very safe on campus regarding my religion." You heard that right. The South is now the land of tolerance, common sense too. But progressive policies are also pushing students away. Everything from harsh lockdowns, restrictions on free speech, and obsession with gender and race are finally bearing the rotten fruit of their sordid labor. Chicago native Bethel Miles, now a student at Southern Miss, said, quote, "Since day one, my classmates have made me feel welcome. Other than the accents and their cowboy boots." That was wild to me, man. They wear cowboy boots everywhere. It was like I'd found my second home. Which is kind of ironic, because if anyone should be wearing boots, it's an Ivy League school. I mean, where else are you going to find that deep? Wow. Mackie, did you put that word in my script so I had to say it on camera?
I don't curse when I host, Tom.
Classic Joe Vito right there. The Vito strikes again.
Joe, what do you think of this? People going to school down south to avoid all this politically correct stuff up north?
Well, there was just a protest at UT Austin today, but they did deal with the civil disobedience. I'll say this, the protests in the north might actually make school seem a little more attractive up there to me, because I remember at the end of the term, I'm like worried about studying for finals or writing that term paper, not like going camping indefinitely until they pretend to arrest you. It's just all they need is for one university president to do the right thing and say you can't take over portions of the school and falsely imprison and assault people, and the rest of the presidents will then plagiarize it.
Yeah. Guy, you're kind of an Ivy League type of guy. Do you think it's much worse in these elite schools?
I'm a Big Ten guy. I went to Northwestern, which is like the nerd school. Cats, go Cats. They've been awful on this issue, unfortunately. So sort of on brand, on trend. There was an analysis of like by sports conference, how many of the schools are under investigation for anti-Semitism. The Ivy League had more than half. The Big Ten had quite a few. The SEC in the Southeast had 0 of those 16 schools. So there's something to be said there. And here's one thing, and this is like a very, I think, sort of superficial point, because it's a very serious problem. But part of college, of course, learning is paramount, but it's supposed to be fun, too. And nothing about this stuff is fun on these campuses. It is exhausting. Yeah. It's awful. It's bigotry on parade. And for my money, it's a lot less money to go to some of these schools down south. First of all, it seems like if you're going to be a huge group of people gathered together screaming something on a lawn, one side is doing it against the Jews and in favor of terrorists, and other schools are doing it because they stormed the field after a football win. That's the one I want to be at, and I think most Americans agree with me. Yeah.
Kat, you're in a new documentary about Hillsdale College, are you not? Yes.
Yes.
How was your experience at that school? I am assuming a school like Hillsdale, a great reputation, didn't have this kind of nonsense there.
This was definitely not happening there.
Yeah.
Also, what was happening there is I had a full tuition scholarship.
Wow.
Yeah, for academics and journalism. But no.
She was expecting applause.
No, I didn't. I did not. No, I did not. No.
What's your quality?
No.
I beat people up, pretend.
No, I did not. I'm actually making a point, which is I'm using that to make a point, which is that Ivy League schools, on the other hand, I got into one, right, and I couldn't afford to go, so I didn't go. They're also extremely expensive, and really the only reason you go to, for example, Columbia, is to then say I went to Columbia, and then everyone would say wow. But now you could say that, and people might say wow in like a different way. It was this heralded association to have, but now it's controversial to have. So the one thing that really was a value, maybe some of the connections, but really was the brand of these universities. I went to an Ivy League school. When you don't have that, a lot of people would say, why would you spend all that money? When you could get a scholarship, maybe somewhere else, or go somewhere else that is not that expensive.
Yeah. So, Tyrus, is the sheen gone from these elite universities?
Listen, I live in the South, and it's nice to be finally recognized for being tolerant, and we're inviting. We want all these smart brains coming to our colleges and institutions. We don't care if you're black, white, your sexual orientation, whatever. You are welcome, and that's how it works down there. The only thing we issue is just no Dutch. Keep the Dutch out. Other than that, we're good. I don't stand for racial intolerance, but there's a hyphen, the Dutch. So just keep them out. And I have my reasons. And
what is happening?
Well, it just goes back to the point. You had a chance to go to Ivy League school. I threw people over the rope. We're in the same chair. That's America. That's beautiful. But the sadness of it, and I have to make a joke because there's really no joking in this. You're going to a higher level of learning, and you're with troglodytes. That is crazy. Yeah, that's a big word. Look it up. But they're not just scared to go to school. These kids are chanting, I am Hamas. And they're not just kids. The recent group that was arrested was like 25, 28. These aren't 21-year-old, 20-year impressionable children who are marching. These are grown adults who are screaming, I am Hamas, which means, and then the media tries to soften it, pro-Hamas. No, you're Hamas. If you say I'm Hamas, then you're Hamas. We have terrorists in this country protesting at our schools, and we're doing nothing about it. Because right now, if Lord forbid, Joe, you're not Dutch, right? So we,
no, I'm not.
If the three of you decide to be Nazis and stand outside the Fox building, how long before you think you'd be fired and never act back? The moment you wouldn't even get the Nazi out. You get the nut, you'd be like, done.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they keep saying pro this. No, they say, if I say I'm Hamas, it means I'm claiming everything that Hamas does. I'm literally in broad daylight saying I am a terrorist. What you going to do about it, America? And get them out of our campuses. They should be arrested and charges pressed.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will.
Tonight, TikTok's defiant new challenge. The social media giant says it will fight a potential ban. The looming legal battle in the U.S.
We aren't going anywhere.
And Canada's take on claims of a security risk. Police reveal videos in the search for suspects after a wave of extortion cases.
These are all local Edmontonians.
Plus, tracking a hidden enemy. New research on head injuries in elite soldiers.
Somebody that I know, that I'm close to, takes their own life.
Alex Jones has made his appearance. Also, an American conspiracy theorist creates a Canadian political scandal and is seeing really believing.
We started looking at it more and more and more, and we thought, whoa.
A Canadian couple, a mythical monster, and a photo getting a lot of attention.
It's unexplainable. It's unbelievable.
CTV National News with Omar Sachatina.
Good evening, everyone. One of the world's most popular social media platforms has defiantly vowed to take the U.S. government to court after Washington officially put the Chinese-based parent company behind TikTok on notice. ByteDance now has 9 months to sell the platform, which has 170 million American users, with a 3-month extension if a sale is in progress. If it doesn't divest, TikTok will be banned in the U.S. And while President Joe Biden has signed the bill declaring the app a national security threat, his campaign said today it still plans to use it through the U.S. election. CTV's Sarah Plowman on TikTok's countdown and what it could mean for Canadians.
The countdown has started for TikTok. The U.S. president signed a bill into law forcing the app's Chinese parent company to sell or be banned within 9 months.
We do not want to see a ban. This is not about a ban. This is about divestment, selling, right, being sold. This is about our national security.
U.S. lawmakers and the FBI say TikTok is a national security risk, claiming China could turn to the app to access users' data or spread propaganda. A position TikTok resists and vows to fight in court.
Rest assured, we aren't going anywhere. We are confident and we will keep fighting for your rights in the courts. The facts and the Constitution are on our side.
170 million Americans use the app. Some rely on it to make a living.
Have you heard of the Syngonia?
Unlike Americans, Canadian content creators aren't paid by TikTok per view, but do depend on its reach for sponsorships.
TikTok is the vast majority of my income.
3/4 of Toronto's Mark Gaetano's followers are in the U.S.
There's still a wider margin of time to deal with the possible ban and then therefore deal with the repercussions. But it still is definitely scary to think about.
The Prime Minister says he won't comment on what other governments are doing.
Canada will continue to look very closely at how we can make sure we're keeping Canadians safe while making sure we're taking advantage of great technologies.
The Trudeau government has ordered a national security review and banned TikTok from government devices, but some experts don't expect Canada to follow the U.S.
I think Canada will sit back, wait, see the massive backlash.
Despite signing a bill into law that could ban TikTok, President Biden's campaign still plans to use the app to reach young voters. Omar.
Sarah, thanks. Biden's signature also triggered the release of a massive and long-delayed foreign aid package. $60 billion for Ukraine, $8 billion to support U.S. allies like Taiwan, and more than $26 billion for Israel, some of it for humanitarian aid in Gaza.
Israel must make sure all this aid reaches the Palestinians in Gaza.
The war has ignited heated protests that are spreading at university campuses across the U.S. tonight. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators clashed with riot police at the University of Texas in Austin today. Several were arrested. Demonstrators are demanding their schools cut financial ties with Israel. Some Jewish students say the protests are anti-Semitic and make them feel unsafe. The second largest donor to the UN Palestinian Agency says it is restoring funding to the organization after an independent review found Israel provided no evidence to support claims the agency's employees had links to terrorism. The largest donor, the U.S., has yet to do so. But today, along with the United Nations, it called for an investigation into mass graves discovered at 2 Gaza hospitals raided by Israeli troops. Meanwhile, Hamas today released this undated hostage video of American Hirsch Goldberg Poland alive after his abduction on October 7th. Footage from that day shows his arm badly damaged by a grenade. In today's video, his left hand is gone. His parents calling on Israel and Hamas to reach a ceasefire agreement and sending this message.
Hirsch, if you can hear this, we heard your voice today for the first time in 201 days. And if you can hear us, I am telling you, we are telling you, we love you, stay strong, survive.
The Cuban government has apologized to a grieving Quebec family and says it has launched an investigation after they were sent the wrong body. After 68-year-old Faraj Arjour died on a family holiday in Cuba, relatives paid $10,000 to have his body returned to Canada. But when they went to identify it, another man was in the casket. An American far-right conspiracy theorist is part of a Canadian political clash between the Prime Minister and the man who wants to take over his job. CTV's Michael Couture explains.
We're making a historic shift in our approach to public lands.
While promoting his budget, the Prime Minister took a swipe at Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
Every politician has to make choices about what kind of leader they want to be.
Trudeau's comments come after a video surfaced online showing Poilievre visiting anti-carbon tax protesters on a highway in Nova Scotia.
Everyone's happy with what you're doing.
According to the Broadband Institute's Press Progress, members of the group have been affiliated with the so-called Freedom Convoy and the far-right group Diagolon. Trudeau also referenced this endorsement from far-right conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, who called Poilievre the real deal.
So the fact that Pierre Poilievre hasn't stood up to condemn that endorsement, the fact that he continues to encourage the kind of divisive approaches to Canada that I don't think Canadians want to see, really shows that he will do anything to win.
In a statement to CTV News, a spokesperson for Pierre Poilievre said, "It is the endorsement of hardworking, everyday Canadians that Conservatives are working to earn. Unlike Justin Trudeau, we're not paying attention to what some American is saying." Some Conservatives contend Poilievre shouldn't have to respond to it unless it becomes a political liability. And it's not clear it is one at this point.
Omar.
All right, Mike, thanks. Yet another athlete has been suspended indefinitely from pro sport, this time football, after the CFL said an investigation showed he bet on league games, including one he played in. Grey Cup champion Sean Lemon abruptly retired 2 weeks ago, 4 months after he signed a 1-year extension with Montreal. And as CTV's Alison Bamford reports, today's penalty likely shuts the door on any potential comeback.
3-time Grey Cup champion Sean Lemon has likely hoisted the cup for the last time. Months after helping the Montreal Alouettes to victory, the veteran defensive lineman is facing an indefinite suspension from the CFL for wagering on league games.
By giving him an indefinite suspension, I think they effectively end his career.
A CFL investigation found what the league calls clear and irrefutable evidence that Lemon bet on games back in 2021, including a game he played in with the Calgary Stampeders. The Stamps organization reacting in a statement saying the club is surprised and disappointed by the revelations and condemns Lemon's actions. The league says there is no evidence to suggest the game outcomes were impacted by the bets, nor did anyone else from the team know about it.
The whole premise of their entertainment product can be undermined if fans don't believe it's real and believe that coaches or players or officials have bets on a game that compromises the integrity of that.
Lemon isn't the only professional athlete to come under fire for sports betting. Just last week, the NBA banned Toronto Raptor Jonte Porter for breaking that league's gambling rules.
The CFL and all Canadian sports have a problem. In Canada, we have an arrest-free zone for match fixers. There's no criminal charge for corruption of sport in our country.
Lemon abruptly retired 2 weeks ago, ending a 13-year career that saw him play for several CFL teams. Now, football insiders say his case will serve as a warning to all players thinking about sports betting. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Regina.
Police in Edmonton released new footage today of local suspects they believe were being directed by someone in India to carry out a series of extortion attempts, 34 since last October, causing $10 million in property damage. Crimes, they say, have now stopped. CTV's David Iwasek on the investigation.
The file is called Project Gaslight, and while it is linked to a criminal element in India, the 10 investigators working the file are confirming it is not related to the shooting death of Edmonton homebuilder Buddha Singh Gill nearly 3 weeks ago.
This homicide is not believed to be connected to the Project Gaslight series.
Police also say the Edmonton extortion incidents have no link to any other similar investigations happening across Canada. 6 men now facing arson and firearms offenses here, but police need to identify others linked to the fires. And they have video of them. First, on November 6th, on 16th Avenue and 12th Street, an unknown trio. They're looking for any tips the public can provide.
It shows 3 suspects getting out of a vehicle with a gas can, and later running back to the same vehicle.
Another video on November 24th, Meadowview Way in Leduc. 3 people again approach a home with a gas can. And then there's these 2 suspects also with a gas can on December 14th in Beaumont. They approach a home, smash their way in, and as they leave, they torch the building and run away. Police know one person, but not the other.
We are looking to identify the person carrying the red jerry can, wearing white shoes and a gray hooded sweatshirt.
They're also asking for information regarding 2 vehicles spotted at the same arson scene and identifying these unknown men buying gas cans at a Walmart and at a 7-Eleven. Police say the arson losses now total $10 million, and while the South Asian community has been receptive at town hall meetings, investigators can't say if any local home builder has ever paid an extortion fee under threat of fire damage. David Wasik, CTV News, Edmonton.
There's a new snapshot tonight of companies that are the worst offenders when it comes to plastic waste. The ranking coincides with a major UN summit in Ottawa tackling what has become a global issue. CTV's Judy Trin reports.
For 5 years, researchers tracked some of this ocean trash to its source. Volunteers in 84 countries documented 2 million pieces of single-use plastics. Half of them were branded.
Now we know which corporations we go to in order to hold accountable for this plastic waste.
The study found that 20% of the branded waste were linked to 4 food and beverage companies: Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Nestle, and Danone. At this UN summit, Canada announced it will force companies to track how much plastic they're using and recycling. But scientists are pushing for more. They want a global agreement to cap production.
One that reduces plastic production and focuses on essential use. There's a lot of non-essential plastics that are being produced and are leaking into the environment.
But lobbyists say work is already being done in the plastics industry to reduce waste.
There are a lot of effort underway in terms of redesigning a lot of the products so that they use less plastic from conception.
Still, the equivalent of 1 garbage truck of plastic is dumped into oceans every minute.
When fisher folks get to the sea, sometimes when they pull their net, the amount of plastics that they catch is more than the fish they are looking for.
Plastics can take up to 500 years to decompose, and even then it doesn't really go away. It just gets smaller and smaller. Research shows that humans ingest the equivalent of a credit card worth of plastic every week. All the more reason to take action now. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
Coming up, fighting an invisible enemy.
It's like being in boxing match, you chase.
The new research into traumatic brain injuries. Plus, hold your horses. The wild scenes through London. A brain disease best known for impacting athletes who have suffered concussions on the playing field is showing up more frequently in soldiers returning from the battlefield. Here's CTV's Adrian Gabriel on the vital research.
From the theater of war to the training field, we're now learning more about a combat wound that has remained nearly invisible for decades. Inside the Brain Imaging Center at Toronto Centre for Addiction and Mental Health, a revealing pilot project on military veterans is underway.
Your brain jiggles around and hits back and forth.
Isabelle Boileau is studying the brains of individuals who've had high exposure to battlefield blasts. She believes some members of our armed forces who've been diagnosed with PTSD may also be suffering from chronic traumatic encephalopathy, also known as CTE. Previously found in hockey and football players, the brain disorder can only be diagnosed after death.
Do you believe we're facing a crisis?
Yeah, in short, it's a crisis. There are certain documented cases of individuals that have died by suicide that have had a proof in brain that they had CTE.
Every 4 to 6 months, somebody that I know, that I'm close to, takes their own life.
Brennan Hine served with the Canadian military for nearly 3 decades. For 11 of those years, he was a member of JTF-2, Canada's top-tier special operations force. Dispatched to Bosnia, Afghanistan, and Iraq, he estimates that he's been exposed to approximately 2,000 explosives.
It's like being in a boxing match each day, pretty much.
While still enlisted, he began to struggle with his focus and temperament. He told his superiors he needed help and was demoted, losing his special forces pay and much of the medical support that comes with it.
Well, that institutional abandonment, that's probably one of the greatest predicating factors to the epidemic we see in veteran suicides.
After being discharged from the military, the father of 2 nearly took his own life.
I was going to go home with the kids, and then I'd come up with a plan on how I was going to take care of that, how I was going to end my life.
Veterans Affairs Canada Liz Hayes is likely suffering from CTE. The former Special Forces breacher is using his voice to demand more support from the Canadian military for those suffering from a traumatic brain injury, so those who fought for our country aren't left to fend for themselves.
Researchers have put out a call for veterans to volunteer and take part in the Brain Research Project Isabelle Boileau and others are leading. Earlier this week, we reached out to the Department of Defense with a list of questions. They've yet to respond. Adrian Gabriel, CTV News, Toronto.
Still ahead, the pushback against a tourism fee to access one of Canada's top destinations. A new fee to visit Quebec's picturesque Magdalen Islands has sparked a fierce debate other tourism hotspots around the world are also facing. Here's CTV's Genevieve Beauchemin.
A plan for tourists to pay to play on the postcard perfect Magdalen Islands has unleashed a storm over the Gulf of St. Lawrence archipelago. As of May 1st, visitors will have to get a pass, pay $30 for a QR code to access the chain of islands. Money's to be invested, says the municipality, to preserve unique landscapes. The islands are home to just 13,000 people, but manage garbage left behind by more than 60,000 visitors a year. And officials say they opted for the pass instead of parking fees or payment for beach access.
It is very important for the residents to keep our place, our islands, our Magdalen Islands, beautiful, healthy. So we need help from all the people that comes to Magdalen Islands.
But the mayor says he never imagined the backlash. City council meeting, some residents said the plan amounts to erecting a border, that even a Quebecer coming to the island for a funeral will have to pay to travel to Quebec territory. And some evoke privacy concerns, as islanders will have to show proof of residency to come and go freely.
No.
Shani Thériault points to a possible legal precedent.
The municipality of Magdalen Islands is no different legally from any other municipality in Quebec. There's absolutely zero difference from moving between Montreal to Quebec City and Montreal to Magdalen Islands.
Other tourist hotspots like Venice are grappling with the era of travel. The city of canals will mark a world first tomorrow, charging day trippers €5, about $7.30 to enter. Everyone dreams of coming to Venice, says Mayor Luigi Brugnaro, but great historic centers of the world must be preserved. Venice is hoping the fee will cut down on day trippers, but the Magdalen Islands say the idea is not to turn anyone away, but for travel to be sustainable. The plan calls for visitors to the islands to show their QR codes as they exit or face a $1,000 fine. And now this is between the months of May and October, the busy summer season. Genevieve Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
And there was a wild scene in another tourism hotspot today. 5 horses escaped from a military training exercise, galloping through the streets of central London for about an hour, one appearing badly injured. 4 people were also treated for injuries. And the horses, well, they're back at their barracks after a trip to the vet. After the break, the legend in the lock and the Canadian couple who might have caught a peek. We leave you tonight with a couple of Canadians suddenly thrust into the media spotlight for what they think they captured across the Atlantic. CTV's Heather Wright explains.
It's one of Scotland's most enduring mysteries, but may or may not lurk beneath the surface of its famous loch.
What we saw something. Who knows? It's unexplainable. It's unbelievable.
Canadian expats Shannon Wiseman and Perry Malm were visiting the Scottish Highlands with their children earlier this month when they saw something.
We were looking down at the loch, and Shannon goes and looks out at the water, and it's like, what's that thing?
They thought maybe a seal or an otter until they were told no, that kind of wildlife doesn't live in the loch.
So we got home, and I was in an internet doom scroll, and I found the official Loch Ness sightings register, submitted the picture, and the Loch Ness people got in touch, and now we're enjoying our 15 minutes of fame.
The register calls the photo compelling new evidence, deeming it the first sighting of Nessie of the year. The couple's children are all in, believing they saw the elusive creature. The parents aren't as sure, but say they want to believe, despite the skeptics.
Well, my brother asked me how my tinfoil hat fits, so I don't know if he was such a good audience.
Perry and Shannon and their kids are certainly not the only ones who believe in Nessie. Sightings of an unexplained creature in the loch date back to the 500s. The mystery took off in the 1930s and exploded with this famous photo of what appears to be a beast rearing its head out of the water. The picture was later exposed as a hoax, still the intrigue persists. Last summer, hundreds of volunteers came out for a massive hunt. They used state-of-the-art technology, but nothing conclusive turned up. Not enough, though, for those who believe.
Our children full on believe it's Nessie, so I believe it's Nessie.
Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
A captivating mystery. That's a snapshot of this Wednesday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.
Breaking news coming out of the by the across the country. Also, the video showing the world that the American race seen alive for the first time in 201 days. What he says his parents, as America obtained positive 12-year life tortured potatoes. The report found that first time flashes broke out in demonstration of cancer. USA, UT, Austin, Columbia, New York. Some protesters requested vehicles surrounded by crowds. And like school has just done. And New York City like by demonstrators as the Bush president to resign. Also, the terror is America's right to first order poll. The son was forced to get shot by a new vessel. Arms arm blown off. And like the first time in 200 days, his parents see him alive. And what their son says to them. The Senate activated Israel activated President Biden signed it. After many problems about water. The US always long range of Ukraine already used like unified Russia. For the first time, the court bring over to justice at the Supreme Court. Now hearing arguments of Iowa's near total Bush ban. What happens to medical is exploiting desperate needs. He's helping the ER. The revealing conflict with the justice at the court today. The American force other than arrested first potatoes. Possibly facing a decade in prison after discovering his carry-on. Said it was accident cycle here right here. The big turn of the month. The deadly class of France. The exclusive right here tonight. Jerry Lamb flying over the site. You'll see what starts tomorrow. We're tracking your storms across several states. 2 back to back. The warning seems London. This force is breaking free. Running the streets. You're flying to new world like a refund. Airlines will owe you. If your flight is canceled, we'll be on this. And incredible rescue by millions. Strangers pulling over the land together. Racing even danger. You're strong. From BBC News, this is World News Now with Daily. Baby Freight Highway against Terror. Popular like 24-year-old American grandson seen alive the first time in 201 days. What he says his parents. But we need to demonstrate across campus demonstration for Israel for Israel last night. March protesting war entering the galaxy. Police weekends. Soon southern protesters camps entrances have closed on students' national ID on campus. At the University of Texas, office for life here. Some force million. So tonight. At Columbia, New York University, protesters fence until tomorrow night. Late later, New York City, Johnson, Columbia, protesters calling on Columbia's president to resign. At Tennessee, so many campuses today is back up at USC. Tonight, protesters across the country. Terror campus apart. At USC Los Angeles, police flashing protesters after keeping them attention trying to force away from the crowd. Some protesters pushed them then surrounding this campus police fire. So protesters have been here for 4 hours at this point. Back in Shanghai, behind us, this cordon of security that we're seeing has got closer and closer. At the University of Texas, also. A track that we're seeing right here. Whose officers pushed back that serious outlying ball. Officers were arrested. That's very good. You give it saying they will not allow this campus to be made. If the students are already around, they say, new campus, so have the protesters at war, then other policy. Students and school at best, we're coming to the profit. At University Ground Zero for the new protest. USC House like Johnson removes the crowd. It's for University President. After meeting students say they can target on campus. A growing number of students have shed. It's support terrorists. They've chased down students. They've mocked them, revived them, they've shouted at them. Some students want to videos like this one only for the trophy protesters with sign waiting. How this song's next target. Reference Hamas military. Alex Dennis, your house secret, my guys.
There are 2,000 centers know as this point, so they also have the government using that
This is the protesters they don't control the this president of the university issued a demand of last night was not ignored. Now they can raise allows students time to government control this is and they can control on university campus during the national law. You have to maintain order. Obviously, when you speak on fire, just rule about last week about anti-Semitism on campus.
That's designed to state. Use out. You don't get rid of it.
It's like USC closing campus anyone without a university ID. David took hours over the campus here. As well as the LAPD is just outside the school as is the LA fire department. John today he will be persuaded by asking him to stop. These protests across the national bar. That line must be the solution process. Thank you. German air unit is America's first order bullet. The sun was forced to back the aircraft Hamas and the hardest farm and blown off. The first time 201 days. Parents seen alive. It is about Hamas. What he says to parents in the parents all the time here. And a new message to some. I'm George Israel. It is the point of the 23-year-old American soldier point. It was the back of the terrorists. The terrorists started before the some 100 day one. On the last further. It shows that music big number of times. After running that's the sun on blown off. Tonight 201 days off. The world now seeing special point in the night. The Mass is in Hebrew. My name is Rachel. Not special to raising down states. Can read this on still on. See your birthday is going. For these alive. You're also concerned about something. The terrorists say this is the after the world. People saying I'm sorry to make sure I was going to have one must say more than anything. Mom dad did I'm very I'm every day on here. You just say something. Not so fighting. Because I need this terrorist on. It's supposed to be attack. Sitting down David. I lost 2 Texas. This mess up. Which messages in a row. Heading 11. First one said I love you, and the second one said I'm sorry. So I immediately knew something terrible had happened. I tried to immediately call him and ring. I wrote, are you okay? No answer. Are you okay? Let me know, okay? And so that's the last time we heard from him. Saturday morning. The fact that he didn't just say I love you, but he said I'm sorry. I could immediately feel that he knew we were going to be in tremendous pain or worry or crisis because it made no sense. We are every person's here. That's who we are. Anyone who's parent, anyone who is mother or has mother can imagine what I'm going through. Hirsch, if you can do this, we heard your voice today for the first time in 201 days, and if you can hear us, I'm telling you, we are telling you, we love you, stay strong, survive. They want to mention the world need to have they want to every language. They feel the question. They try to 201 days, we'll see you alive. Thank you. Back to your US, like 7 Israel, Ukraine, the law. We've seen the US already at 1 million Ukraine. He knows all that. Here's one back.
Tonight, President Biden signed that multi-billion-dollar package. The White House reported the U.S. secret agent Warren Business status for the first time in World War III fights Russia. Those power missiles which traveled with each and every and first President last week for attack by yet again. Yes, Bill Warren said to Ukraine as part of this $6 billion package.
We will send more. I'm not again. Specific numbers for reasons.
The President said the U.S. needs and this desperately needed aid.
I'm making sure the mission start right away. Next few hours, we're going to send in equipment to Ukraine for air defense munitions, for artillery, for riot systems, and army vehicles.
The law also says $26 billion to Israel and $8 billion to Taiwan. The Biden praised the president relative to the U.S. overnight after months of some Republicans railed against Ukraine.
It's going to be America safer. It's going to be the world safer.
And also with the need for China to get or get the U.S.
So anyway, thank you for the first time to vote the Supreme Court today argues Idaho's total abortion ban. What happens when the needs help the ER?
Now, the first time the Supreme Court was made, the Supreme Court weighing the impact of state abortion bans. With hostile Idaho, that total ban can refuse to provide abortions in emergency. The health of a woman at serious risk.
This is part of the same argument that women health is at risk. Federal law mandates that you see emergency care even if having an abortion. The legal justice on court, all women, being here Idaho, putting doctors' candidations and technical positions. Within these submitted number, where women is the medicine, which is
the mayor and justice on court seem declined to support Idaho's position. Just the same way the federal law mandating emergency care also assigns responsibility for unborn child.
The statute imposes upon hospital immunity to the women's also the patient child, and it doesn't tell hospital how it is to adjudicate conflicts between those interests and leaves that to statewide.
Still, even among service, there was some concern about Idaho's position. In one remarkable moment, Justice Amy Amir, a opponent of abortion rights, explained she was shocked by Idaho's argument, but when crisis, they refused abortion in emergency room on case-by-case basis.
It is very case by case. The example is actually, I thought you were an expert and said, well, these kind of cases were covered. You're not saying that? No, I'm not saying that. That's just
you're having. A decision on that case is expected in June. Meanwhile, tomorrow, Justice Wilkes, there are not President Donald Trump should absolutely be meeting his federal case on that overturn before election.
Well, in that case, well, we Supreme Court English. Turn out the violation is like first case for president. After 4 votes found inside the airport. They possibly face years behind bars. Like used to so the hearing possibly facing 12 years in prison. After proposed their state of knowledge. Line laws is Charlie Islands earlier this month. Your paradise journey to make it. They know. Their bad flag. Your security.
I have no idea there's anything warning. I'm going to look at and have some mold.
Now, the ADC that inside were 4 votes.
I defined my asked what are those, and he was like, I think those are hesitant, you're bullets, and that's actually just sort of interest in people getting involved.
You were charged with possession of ammunition. That's what's confiscated. After 11 days, before he brought charges found, allowed her to return home to Oklahoma. Just yesterday, he met with 2 young children. Once he's out on bail, he has attempted police twice. We made that until June. Tonight was a month of the hardship of the Mount Francis Bridge on Major Milestone. Crews working day and night, and now clear shipping channel. People to reopen the port of Baltimore to 80%. That's about before disaster. We started by helicopters. Second Christine Warren, Scottsdale, and the Army Corps of Engineers. We're close up here with the progress of the bridge. When we were average 3 weeks ago, tangled steel trusses jutted about $100. Now almost all of that is gone. And starting tomorrow, everything from cruise ship to car carriers, automatic cargo, can start moving through.
We have this channel is about getting $100 million worth of economic activity for the country. Turn back on again.
The next big deal here is that because 5,000 tons of steel vessels on shipping with a 12 fully loaded Air Force One. And our fellow Downey plan to get that steel off the safe. We're going to get social charges and men visits to even the war can change everything. The top priority of those 2 men construction were still missing in the water. The work stops. Anytime they think there's a chance, it's fine. That's extraordinary. Thank you. We're going to have storms, systems, steady and bare. Live as a young unit, stores, on streets, London, that's a Just your social lives, very strong deals, market, the sanctions between possible Canadian Dallas, Kansas City, Chicago. When you back to the airline, now will refund. Of course, London. So you rules for airlines, flights, cancel, administrations, airlines, automatic issues, refunds, flight cancellations, also refunds for domestic flights within 3 hours. The long season, 3 London, 5 airports, also capital free. 0 starting with 7 lives, 73 people to go seriously. Looking back to that terrifying and brave scene on your station. Finally, extraordinary rescue on their strong. To make the single news of the Interstate 94 incredible rescue, now seen by millions. One string after another, all over rush hour, all over man, and SUV on fire. The doors of the SUV stop against the guardrail. You see them all together, trying to fly over the building. They never missed a department transportation smash into driver's side window. Directly past you, call out, feet first, right tonight. Some strangers answered the call. Can you pull up? That's the stand.
The strangers had from the other so today.
Join the man who rescued 7-year-old Sam Roach is home in the hospital and doing well. Saying I'm alive today. It's literally saved my life. Out of 4, taking all in person. Power strangers, save Sam. Yeah. Thank you for the movies down to the most watched test. Right, violent fascists, new arrests, co-housing protests right on U.S. campus. Police arrayed near horseback, moving on to the University of Texas. Hundreds walk their classes at USC. The massive crowd officers heavily in campus, forcefully making arrests, housing guns, and Columbia University, going to the school's president resigned, saying she can't keep Jewish students safe. Report campus. Also tracking the illegal Arizona House Voting Real Estate 1864 abortion ban. As the Supreme Court hears a major case on emergency abortion access. Look at Justice Single. President Biden signed that foreign aid for Ukraine and provision to ban TikTok in the U.S. The fight message from TikTok CEO. Hamas releasing the video of American hostage first world Poland since he was gravely injured and kidnapped 2 days ago. At the White House, President first time to flee American hostage 4-year-old Abigail Bidon. The serial water process for U.S. New rules on airline refunds and so-called junk fees. This is NBC News with Lester Holt. Leaving and welcome to new arrests as demonstration of the conflict in Gaza, spreading more college campuses across the country, testing boundaries of free speech, tolerance, and the ability to protect students from threatening behavior. The protests in Gaza, increasingly symbolized by 10 campus, setting flashpoint for conversations with police. The movement energized recently by crackdown in New York at Columbia University, where scores were arrested. It's not a powerful figure and his voice to the debate. House Speaker Mike Johnson's visiting Columbia campus today, hearing the accounts of Jewish students who feel threatened by protests, and laying down a challenge to the university's president. 70 classes at the campus.
Palestinian demonstrators flash today, right, the University of Texas, students attempt to occupy campus, stopped by police and forced back. You see the school caught illegal protest on campus. In Solidarity, students at Columbia University demanded school cut financial ties to Israel. In California, now USC at campus, against campus. At Harvard, students racist tests. They were walked at the University of Illinois and in Canada, the University of Michigan. It's
now bigger right now, not only university but across the country.
Students we have all night pushing the leadership of their school, including Canada, is now inside campus for nearly a week. Last night, university president but you're still here. Within the university and society, the school demonstrated another 48 hours after they agreed on conditions, including expanding campus and stopping presses. The department of the human rights of the school was the school the school rights by the balance between and safety of this day, from Superintendent Johnson, who was by
I'm here today with my colleagues. They call on President to resign. She cannot immediately report to the States.
Mr. President of the University today, what would you do about this headline?
I would immediately report to the States if necessary following the meeting of the last conversation.
I should be on campus, students are protest the war. That's
not the respect for free speech.
Freshman Will Harvard, a number of Jewish students met Mr. Johnson. He's a conservative who have a secret house on campus calling for disaster. Absolutely not. Dedicated Jewish professor, a pastor in Canada protesters. Multiple protesters have done about taking down our heritage institutions they think of as weapons of voting domination. Better known as the Australian Party, cellular alarm with NYPD's arrest on campus. They vow not to use extreme force as a way to handle conflicts over complex challenge speech.
Some focus out of Columbia University Stadium in campus 48 miles from campus.
One of the university's and stop harassment, but the organizers organized the airborne standards and on met units needs to regulate
So not your hand. There's our longest day overturning 1864 law abandoning all abortions. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court arguments on near total abortion ban in Idaho violates federal law. Lord George, the Supreme Court, what is going to say Arizona?
Well, to repeal the 1864 law, now your contract, that's the Senate as well. And the governor first district needs to next week. This will be officially off the table. But today, all eyes on Idaho. Dare say ban facing Williams today. Reading losses, so funny. It happens to so many families. Jennifer Atkins, when she was pregnant, and on Halloween, she has been playing nickname Baby Spooky. But when she went to a routine doctor's appointment at 12 weeks, her doctor said Baby likely had Turner syndrome, a rare chromosome deficient, often fatal, and likely to put Jennifer's own health in jeopardy. They said, we're surprised that you're pregnant. I'm getting this very low. Most people have this right now. I was just in total shock. When she asked about options, they said, well, for Idaho, they're marketing for you. Actually, get a heartbeat. We can't terminate your pregnancy.
The
school was near total abortion ban in front of the U.S. Supreme Court today. The ban went into effect after the court overturned Roe v. Wade. The saying allowed abortions only when a mother's life is at risk, not her health. Doctors say that was in a dangerous mind.
It makes no sense to baby till non death.
Are you listening to die? That's what I read out the most. That's what I can't think. In court today, the administration argued Idaho's law directly conflicts with federal law that requires hospitals to provide patients in an emergency whatever treatment necessary to stabilize them. The legal justice is hearing concern.
I mentioned no, she's not supposed to read the words. In the Idaho says, sorry, no abortion here. And
result is that key patients are now allowed to that state.
But Republican Attorney General says the federal government should dictate state laws on abortion. Having more health could be at risk. General John drove 6 hours forward for an abortion.
We were angry that not only did we have to go through the trauma and grief of losing everyone to baby, but then we had to have this emotional trauma of traveling to the procedure.
Judge Tuesday in a different lawsuit asked the judge to clarify the abortion ban medical exemption, and now she's pregnant again.
It's scary, and it continues to get scarier just knowing what state the federal carries in our state right now. It's like walking on eggshells.
And Lord, it's another big day. Court tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a key question. The new Republican administration trying to overturn the last election in a few decades, make it
Lord, thank you. John, today, showed American hostage first world Poland alive. There was a election more than 6 months ago. President Biden meets the first American who was held by Hamas, a 4-year-old girl. Here's Sanchez.
Tonight, some Canadian Hamas being the first list. Americans made hostage first world Poland in captivity. That 65 of the is almost miraculous. Says the shows being kidnapped from the Super Bowl music festival. His life on badly damaged by the name. Says the shows 23-year-old's hand. He's gone. Meteors otherwise uninjured. He's on 5 Americans believed to be alive in Hamas activity. While the being
love you so much, I miss you so much, and I can do everything I hear, he says. His parents reached John tonight, calling him Joel, wants to reach his inspired.
We're relieved to see you alive. We're also concerned about your well-being.
Heard your voice today for the first time in 221 days, and you can hear us. I'm telling you, we're telling you, we love you, stay strong, survive.
In your office, President Biden also made for the first time the free U.S. hostage. 40-year-old Abby Ali, the youngest American kidnapped by Hamas was released last year. But he's also 133 hostages still in Gaza, at least 36 of them confirmed dead, and Herschel Poland's parents have been passionate advocates for their release. Seeking answers several times to stop
How do you walk through Amir? But you cannot wake up from ever.
A family in agony, but not despair.
One line that you say every single day in your house, and somebody gets us in a secret to say so much hope it is mandatory.
That's Sanchez refused, tell me.
Also, White House President Biden signed a bill today almost $100 billion in new aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, and questions about the future of TikTok. Here on the internet,
China keeps spending about $100 billion result. New American finally out of the way. And President Biden signed $100 billion for aid package. The outcome of the system alone has approved for a delay caused by conservative Republicans. Who went out to House City split. Multiple officials have used the president protocol to recognize the court justice by making the consequences of inaction. Still, the evidence of Ukraine had a disadvantage. The final page said that's easily overnight. It includes $60 million for Ukraine, $8 billion for allies Taiwan, and $1.26 billion for Israel for transatlantic for Palestinians facing famine.
Israel must make sure all the savings and housing in Gaza out of the way.
The president should also countdown for TikTok against Chinese territory 9 months to sell the social media platform or face a ban in the US. So TikTok is already on legal challenges.
The president was fighting for rights, imports, the facts, and the constitution on our side.
Even though the side bill declares national security threat, his campaign says it has to keep using the avenues to action before it will ban the TikTok.
Texas Security Funds were Ohio, part of the U.S. over the weekend. About 5 million from Texas, West, 50 storms and large hail, deadly winds and tornadoes. The risk expands to include 20 million people on Friday and continues in the plains and Midwest over the weekend. It's 60 seconds in the rules. Airlines have to follow a refund and slow extra fees. You need to know. Talking about new regulations requiring airlines to make quick refunds in cash if flight is disrupted and pull back current so-called blood fees too. Tom Casello, what do you know?
The rules will make refunds automatic. Airlines won't pass money. Flights are significantly delayed. Cancel. Right now, every airline has refunds differently. Soon they'll be required to issue credit card refunds within 7 days. If passengers flying alternate transportation or credits for domestic flights, only more than 3 hours and up to 6 hours delays like international flights. Refunds are checked bags not delivered within 4 hours. Or if you pay for something you don't get, like Wi-Fi or receipt, cash refunds, vouchers.
If you're getting the passengers describe how hard they have to push to just get refunds that are owed.
The White House also targeting so-called junk fees. Require airlines to disclose upfront baggage and reservation change fees. Assure passengers that buying a ticket guarantees a seat. You don't have to pay more for select seat. And no advertising misleading promotional discount fares that don't include mandatory fees. The airline say customers are already given the choice of public options with terms and conditions that best fit their needs after search results. The new rules take effect in October, just before the end of the year rush. The administration also working on a proposal allowing families to together without being charged for airlines. Guaranteed that airlines won't be charged more.
Okay, Tom Casello, thank you. And next, some patients begin changing expensive weight loss drugs, resorting to desperate measures as insurers not coverage. Right now, you're enticing weight loss drugs and the number of insurers saying they won't cover them. Here's your number.
This new health plan changed the life of employees. I'm happy. We hear several health regulations 50 pounds and no longer be diabetic. It's really helped. Maybe we'll have on a basis. But this month, as you said that, how are you doing about medication? Time or 76? When say employee health insurance plans stop covering the new GMT drugs for weight loss, but not diabetes. I don't expect nothing, but I can pay $490 for it. Come on, that's crazy. I'm gonna have to get off of it cold 50, and then it's gonna be about it. North Carolina State Treasury says the state had no choice.
This drug had potential last year of costing $100 million. That's more than we spent for cancer treatment.
Across the state, the drugstores by 700% between 2021 and 2023. With taking up 10% of the plans, spending on prescription drugs. Pharma says the real problem is the price charged by manufacturers and legally and demo based averaging more than $1,000 per month.
We're going to see something's wrong when a drug can sell for over $1,000 in the state, and in the home country where this company is headquartered, can sell for less than $300.
You refer to drug companies as a cartel. What do you mean by that?
Cartel is defined by the Dictionary Association with Association with I mean, that's what's happening in the drug industry and also drug industry.
And 6 News globally stressed the importance of expanded coverage. With no saying state multiple workable options and shows you added obligation to employees living with obesity. Other employee plans including University of Texas and Mayo Clinic, already coverage in the past, as well as some states. Meanwhile, right away, and patients such as renewal fallouts.
And also, none of the last week. This year, being waged, 63 medications, acting with medicines, cholesterol medicines, have years behind medicines.
Like Cyrohacking, then you'll put the drugs and see what happens. Aaron Weldon, NBC News, Hillsborough, North Carolina.
And that's news for this Wednesday. Thank you for watching. I'm Please take care of yourself and Jack. Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Goodman. Have a good life.